Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the JT Foxx Podcast Network. And on this network, we interview some of the biggest names in the world: Pacino, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Mark Wahlberg, just to name a few. Sometimes we talk about the news, sometimes we debate it, sometimes we talk about income to wealth. And today just goes to show maybe the power of social media. So I had no idea who this gentleman was. I watch a video and, he's talking about how he bought this penthouse in Miami, and now it's worth $9 million. And it looked very, very similar to a lot of the bullshit I see on Instagram, right? The normal, everyone flexing and then, find out they don't have what they have after speaking with them or investigating further. But I was very, very curious. And I said, you know what? He looks different, but he sounds the same as me, although there are things he does that I don't do. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot as well. And I've asked a couple people around, so I do have some feedback on him. But he is a young aspiring entrepreneur, and he has the same sort of problem I do. None of us want to talk about how we did it because we talked about it 1,000 times. I'm sure he wants to make up a story about how he started a Blockbuster and he lived on a cardboard box and he flipped that, because that'd be much more interesting. So if you want his story, you can actually go. He's got a whole biography on his YouTube channel about his story. So please welcome. He's in commercial real estate. He owns an investment company called Klein Investments. And we're going to deep dive a little bit what he does, but all the way from Miami, please welcome Robert Viviani. How are you, my friend?
Good, buddy. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to get straight to the point. So you're not the traditional commercial real estate investor, right? Is that you have the beard, the mohawk, the lion? You're a bit loud in terms of your approach, but you're soft-spoken. So let me just ask you a question. So at this point, we'll talk about your success later. When people see you for the first time, right, what do they think, right? Because I've never met someone in my world, and I'm in a similar world as you, who is actually dressed like you and has a mohawk like you as well. So talk about that. What is it a standing out thing? Or are you just like having a mohawk?
I think it's to answer your first question was what do people first think? It's intimidation. No, he must be scary. He must be, that guy that's super loud and super out there. And it's actually far from that. Like you said, I'm actually more soft-spoken than I am loud. And it all actually, the whole look, I guess you could say, the beard, the mohawk, kind of came as a result of COVID. I couldn't get a haircut for like 5 months. I kept growing out my hair and my beard. I'm like, you know what? This is actually kind of cool and it's different. And I was like, I just didn't mind it. I'm sure like you, with no offense, with the suit, the tie, the whole 9 yards. I was like that for years. And I was like,
for the record, I'm wearing military pants. I
There
just
you
want to
go,
point that
baby.
out to him, brother. I'm wearing military pants and they're free from Under Armour. So
Yeah, and like you see, that's my point. It's like at some point, it's like it's time to be myself, right? Our industry is so dominated by that certain type of look and certain type of feel that have been in this industry for 50 plus years. I'm like, every other industry in this world is getting disrupted. Why not real estate? Why not how we look at real estate? How we look at the things I do and how I can evolve and change it. And that's where, Blackline kind of came about.
So obviously, from my end, I mean, this is my own tie company, a JT Foxx power tie, like the power look. I'll be honest with you. When I have this, I can command the room. You get that first attention. You have confidence, similar to what you do. So I'm able to get more respect. Listen, if I wear my military pants and my white T-shirt, when I board a plane, it seems to be like, sir, is this your seat? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, yes, I can afford the whole entire first class, right? But if I wear this, there's an image part of point, right? And so do you ever wonder about like other people, especially your industry? It's a very, it's a very small world at the top. Everyone knows anybody, especially in Miami. And it tends to be in the world, old boys club. You don't fit that narrative. And so did you ever wonder about maybe what the way I am now got me to where I am here today? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But now I want to step it up to the next level. Sometimes you need to change, adapt, or your philosophy is over time, they're just going to know who I am and that's who I am. And if you don't like it, then screw you.
I think it's definitely more of the latter. It's more of I've made a name for myself, but there's a lot of people, as I'm sure you've seen on social media, that talk a big talk and don't back it up with proof and facts and what they've done. By 32 years old, I've bought and sold with my own money in excess of $500 million in deals. I don't know how many 32-year-olds can actually show that on paper and have gotten featured on Forbes or Real Deal or Wall Street Journal or whatever it is with the amount of success and background that I've had. And I think I let that speak for itself versus just my look. And the look, everyone knows who I am for my look. So it kind of goes hand in hand. When they see me on Real Deal, when I go to a meeting, when I speak at an event, it's okay, that's Robert Rivani. And he's not just one of these young guys that's a social media guy that wants to show off and go and raises money from other people and pretends it's his. There's proof in the pudding in what I do, the people I do business with, the people I buy deals from. The biggest REITs in the world are not going to do business with some Joe Schmo on the street with an Instagram account. They need to verify you and to make sure who you are and make sure you're just not some random guy. So I let my work speak for myself, and then my look is just the cherry on the top.
So you said on one of your videos, listen, the watch, all the cars, don't buy any of this shit. I worked for it, and that's why I can afford it. Okay. So I have a lot of things. Okay. But I'm tend to be more in the frugal. I don't like wasting money. But then you look at your social media and you got a picture of you in a Ferrari and all this stuff, and you get lumped into a category that if I'm just looking, I don't know you, even you say, hey, I don't care about this stuff. You keep posting. And so why do you think it's necessary for you to post, like, say, a picture of you in your Ferrari? Like, your content, what you say makes sense, but like, it comes to a point that you're not selling, you don't have a course, right? Am I like, you're not selling a course or coaching, correct? Or you're a real estate investor full time, right? And you see that in that world. And I think I call him Fluffy Cardone, the same way. I mean, how many times you show the goddamn jet, right? The wealthiest people in the world, right? Whether it's Elon or Bezos or Gates, you will never see them flash their wealth, right? And you're not selling anything. And I think your track record speaks for itself. What you've done, what you just bought recently, I think it was called One Museum or something like that, right? So the track record is there. Why say, I'm going to show this picture of me in a Ferrari, which alludes that you're successful? That's why you're in the Ferrari. Like, but even though on one hand, your message is, would the message be more impactful if you said, listen, I got all this shit, I don't show it? Do you think that message would be more impactful? So why do you do it?
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. Because the message is a twofold message. The first part of the message is me trying to explain the journey of how I got to where I got. And that my number one priority as I was making wealth was not to buy the flashy shit and to show off and to become that guy. But there's also something you need to look forward to as you're working to make money, that, hey, when I do get to a certain level, then you can afford these things, the Ferrari, the watch, and not really care about spending it. So when you asked the earlier question of why am I doing what I'm doing, you're right. I don't sell the course. I don't make any money out of it. It's more of just trying to help the younger generation and all the people, thousands of people that DM me on how to start, how to go about this, what should I do? And a lot of people forget about it because of social media. They make their first $1 million, they're spending $250,000 on a car. That's the stupidest thing in the world, and that's the message I'm trying to get across.
But the message is, but they eventually don't see that. The people don't see that.
Car.
Like, you may say that, but they still, you know as well as I know, they'll make their first $1 million and they're going to want to be like you, and they're going to spend the car, right? What don't you think though? Like, when you meet people, right? I'm sure you know a lot of people in the industry, right? They're loaded, right? And they're very kind of low key type approach. And you realize, holy shit, that guy owns that yacht, or he owns all these buildings, and that person never flashes. And then even though you're trying to, and here's the thing, between me and you, I've had the cars, I have all the big stuff. Does it make you happy? It don't make, I mean, I have it, but it's not, once you have it, you're like, insurance, car payments, oil changes, I scratch my rims. That's another, like, I think that like you want it. And then when you get it, you realize that, maybe it's not all that, like people said. I think it was more about, now that I got it, but now that I just want to simplify. Most wealthy people, as they grow, they don't accumulate more stuff. They actually want to simplify. So even though I understand your message, but people don't see that. They just see, I want that. And as soon as they make it, they do it. They're not going to remember the message of, like, hey, I need to take that $1 million and reinvest it myself. And I know that because I talked to some guy and it's like, hey, listen, they saw your video and was very impressed. And like, I'm going to own a car like he does and watch like does. And I said, when are you going to do that? As soon as I make money. But I said, his video said, but they didn't do that. So what if the message, what if your message was, man, I got all this money. You know what? That's not who I am. Let my content inspire you. And then once you see in the background, so I feel like we're saying the right things, but the message may not be perceived because people don't understand. Right? We live in a society.
But you also have to take into consideration that the newer generation's attention span is a 7-second TikTok. If you're trying to explain a message and you go through an IG with 500 posts, anyone at any point can click on a post and be like, I didn't fully understand the whole message. And I think the biggest thing that I have to say to all that is I'm not selling anything at the end of the day, right?
That's what I'm saying. You have immunity on that part. You have immunity
Yeah,
on that part.
it's not like I'm saying follow my tips and become blah blah blah. It's me giving my insight, how I went, my life story, and however people want to dissect that, it's up to them. I can't.
But when you put your stuff out there, whether you like it or not, you're a beacon of influence, right? And between me and you, this younger generation, this 7-second TikTok doesn't help them to succeed, right? I mean, you that's not how business is done. I think.
We can get into 1,000 different reasons on why they're not succeeding, like other than my videos. But I hear what you're saying.
No, but I'm not saying that. You know what I mean? Like, but there's fundamentals, right? There's fundamentals that a 7-second generation, as we call it now, they don't know the sacrifice or long hours, or to them, it's like, well, I need to relax. I need to watch broke flicks. I need to have vacations. Your story of selling your first business at $150,000, your sneaker business, to your first deal, to your first shopping center. That to me, see, I can read between the lines because I have achieved a lot of success. So I get it, right? The idea is you kept taking one thing, rolling another thing. It's just the message. And I'm just telling you from my perspective, your message, like even my first impression was like, oh, the fuck, another one of those, right? And it wasn't like and then I saw that you bought the one museum place, the restaurant. And at first I thought it was the whole building. That was well done though. And then once I dug a little bit, it's the restaurant on the floor, which by the way is equally as impressed. I was like, damn, how the hell did he buy that thing? Because I know how much that thing is, right? That's like $500 million plus. And then it turns out to buy the bottom part, and maybe we'll talk about that in a second. And then I was like, I had to dig deep and I had to read between the lines, because I said to myself, listen, you can't fake that. You know what I mean? You can't fake that. So that's why I looked at it. And I'm just saying, I personally, someone who speaks to tens of thousands of people, I think the message of here's this guy who's done everything. And, to me, what impressed me the most was that acquisition that you did. I was like, that's a very, and I'm sure it was very competitive. You had a lot of competition for that space, and somehow you ended up with it. And then your follow-up video of you, like, of the empty space. So hearing you talk, I know you're not fake, right? I'm just telling you, like, the message of it, it's almost you get like lumped into everyone else. Because I showed 5 people that I know, right? And they all said, oh, fuck, another Grant Cardone wannabe. Like, and that was not the case. And I'm sure by this interview is not the case, right? So, and people say things about me. So I was just wondering, is the messaging has to be like, hey, you think in our industry, right? In order to inspire the youth, right? Is to say, you know what? Shit don't matter, right? What you need to be motivated is by the game, the next deal, the next opportunity, not stuff, right? And when you are successful in business, the stuff will come. The $9 million, penthouse, the house in Beverly Hills, the cars, the watches, and all that. You think that that's how the youth, like the message of the youth? Because I don't think the message of the youth is working now. I think it's instant gratification, and there is no such thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think no matter what I say, what potentially you say, what most people say, people are going to be stuck into what the trend and what all their friends are doing and what's the latest TikTok thing, for good or for bad. I think you and I came from a much different generation where the internet and social media wasn't impactful as our day-to-day lives, where a lot of people are unfortunately getting their advice, maybe not from me. I think I have 70,000 followers or something, but that guy that has the million, that maybe owns one property, but he's socially famous, so everyone should trust him. So that's why I have not to date gotten involved in the courses and this, that, the other, because it's not my game.
But you know why? I know you did. The guy with $1 million doesn't have $1 million, and I'll tell you why. Right? You look. I don't know if you notice, and I knew you're not fake because there's an app that I go on a website to see if people buy their social media, right? And a guy like you wouldn't buy 70, you'd buy 500,000 or $1 million, right? Like if you're going to buy, you're not going to do 70, right? And there are so many people right now who are buying that credibility, right? So when you went to Forbes, I checked, right? Because there is on Forbes now where people will pay and then they'll put a fake magazine of themselves, right? And that just eats me alive because, or they'll do the Forbes Council and congratulate themselves because they got nominated, but they paid the $5,000, right? So we've become a generation of fake it till you make it. What are your thoughts about buying the likes, buying that credibility? And is it, some people say, well, you fake it, and then if you make it, then at least they got you into the door, or does it have this inauthentic feeling to it as well?
I think it's a mix of both. I think, like you said, in the commercial real estate world, it's a very small world. Like someone's trying to fake it, everyone will know how, where's your proof of deal, where's your histories, what have you done. So I think it's very hard. The people that are like the online guys, similar to you, if someone reaches out to me for a podcast or interview, like you can't buy a lot of views, engagement. There's ways to always tell. So I tend to stay away from those people that, look like the more obvious fakers and whatnot. And look, I'm not, again, from that world that I think just because someone has 1 million followers, I choose them over someone that has 75,000 followers to talk to, because I care about substance and value provided more than I care about, well, I have 80,000 followers versus 100,000 and I grew because of such and such guy. And I think that's the difference between me and a lot of people, is that my wealth and income is not coming from social media and trying to pull a fast one or get money from an interview or something like that. This is just a hobby for me, in a way to help others however I can, or express a story or my life. And I think that's where it is. And I think the reason why I started social media, which I actually only started a public account 18 months ago, believe it or not, like 15 months ago, it's fairly new. I was actually very quiet, because our industry, is always more confidential. People like to keep things to chest. And it just came out of nowhere, where a lot of people in the younger generation was like, well, we don't relate to these 60-year-old, 70-year-old dinosaurs in real estate, or, oh, their father passed away and handed them $1 billion real estate portfolio. They didn't start from scratch. As I'm sure you know this best, it's very difficult to make money in real estate in a short amount of time. It's a long person's game.
It is.
It is grueling. And to do what I've done, and so many people at our age that are getting into real estate or want to be able to figure out how to start, I'm trying my best to help what I can and do what I can. But, obviously you're not going to make everybody happy and whatnot.
Let me ask you a question. Do you advise someone who's never done a real estate deal or hasn't done too many to get into the commercial space?
Absolutely not. I always tell.
I was hoping you would say yes, so I could debate you. You're killing me, bro. You're killing me.
Absolutely not. What
I
I call
agree.
so. It's really funny. So I just bought a $20 million house as my first residential project, because one of my closest friends to me, you can't do residential. It's too impossible to remodel a house. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? You mean a remodel of 5,000 square foot house is difficult when I'm sitting here trying to redo 500,000 square foot shopping centers? Like, how are you going to compare an apple to an orange? And what I've always said jokingly is, like, if you get into the residential, it's, the minor leagues. And when you get into commercial, it's the major leagues. There's just so many other aspects that you're not seeing in residential that you get into commercial. And it's a lot more difficult. And that's why you don't have all these Selling Sunset or all these Netflix shows like you mentioned earlier in the commercial real estate game. It's just a different beast, and it's a lot more intense.
It's also a sophistication when you talk to someone, right? You're like, do you have any distressed, motivated, right? And so people quickly know. And
Right.
for example, too, it frustrates me when people want to do multi-units, which also, it's very complicated. Rents, things break down. You have so many different factors in a multi-unit that people don't understand. And they just think that this idea of, I'm going to buy a big multi-unit, it's going to be cash flow. And second of all, too, who's going to lend you the money? Like, at the end of the day, the banks, especially now more than ever, they'll be like, okay, you've never done a deal. Yeah, you bring other people in, but where's your skin in the game? Where's not? But I think people just teach about, oh, anyone can do it. And I think, I did my first 500 deals flipping, but I made $10 million in the bank, right? It was $10 million. That's a lot of money. And singles and doubles, while people were just waiting for one big deal, which could close out of escrow a million other ways. And so I think, people have this expectation because, yes, bigger deals can get you rich, but also can go very broke. And you're probably going to see now a lot of people with variable rates, right, getting, readjusted right now.
I butchered so many people, and so many people, I think it was 12 months ago, like multifamily interest rates all time low. I get a loan on a 2.5% and buy multifamily at 4%. I'm like, what happens when multifamily rates get to 5% or 6% and you held that 4.5 cap? And that's why I love retail so much as a hedge against inflation, because your spreads are typically higher over the interest rates. So that way the market shift, you're protected a little bit more. And again, I think that's,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, unfortunately, so many online gurus and so many people keep pushing the multifamily space or the SFR space, and they don't understand how much, interest rates can affect that, how it can change so many patterns, and people only see a small snippet of what a story is versus a 3 to 5 year hold period.
Well, the funny thing is, we recently sold a property in Kentucky, and someone bought it us at a 3 cap. It's like, I would never have bought. They bought it from us. We made a lot of money. We bought it in 2020, turned it up, C class, made it into B plus, fully rented it. And we sold it. We made a lot of money, millions and millions, right? And what was offered to me, I never in 1,000 years would have paid that. And people were buying 2, 5, and 3 caps at a 2.53% interest. So, and everyone's like, raise the rents. But the number of percentage as it goes up. I mean, what right now they're asking banks 5.5%, almost 6% on a multi-unit. Residential, we're at 7.25, probably go to 8.85, 9, maybe 10 as well. And I think everyone just had it was going to last forever. And it's not probably the problem is that people never look at the downside of investing. They always just look, it's always going to go up. They don't be like, what if it doesn't?
Right, for sure.
So what about retail though? When let's say we go into a very bad economic, and I think it's going to be different than 08, partly because people have more equity in their homes, but let's just assume we go through some turbulent times, right? Fear, stagnation, all that stuff, right? Retail people, like sometimes those are the first ones to like kind of get hurt, right? Especially a small and pop. How are you hedging yourself? Is it by getting these big tenants, AAA credits, that good or bad, they'll have 10 years. Like, how are you hedging yourself against a potential downturn to get into business?
So I think that this is a tough answer for me because it was Robert 1.0 who was the mom and pop landlord that owned 4,000 square foot buildings, and you freak out because you're only as strong as your mom and pop tenants versus, I bought close to $100 million in power centers in the past 2 years. And the reason why I did that was because a multitude of reasons, but to try to keep it as concise as possible is when COVID hit, my wife came and sat and told me, Rob, I don't need to go to a grocery store anymore. I don't need to go and buy my stuff from storefronts as much anymore. I'm just going to get shipped to the house. My wife's a dietitian, a hardcore grocery person. And when she told me that, that made me shift my view on retail properties, because I said, okay, you don't need to have a CVS, a Rite Aid, and a Walgreens on every single corner. You don't need to have a 7-Eleven on every single corner. So what I foresaw happening was that the retail market was going to get condensed. You're going to see some closures like you're already starting to see with a lot of the national brands. But what they're going to do is they're going to keep their top tier locations. So that's where location comes in. That if I'm in a market, let's say like New Jersey, where I just bought my power center, if I'm the main power center and I have proof of sales that are doing better than the 2 other power centers around me, and I'm main and main, it's more likely that those locations will close. Mine will absorb those sales, and I'll be the best in town. The problem with a lot of retail investors, they just look at cap rates and rent growth, but they don't realize all the macroeconomic effects that are in that trade area that, hey, a national guy or a mom and pop does not need to be here. They may go closer to the freeway and they may shut your store down because another landlord can just buy out their lease or pay for a relocation or whatever it is. So with retail, you have to be very, very specific in what it is you're buying. Again, like I said, being the best in class, having all the different draws of national chain tenants coming collectively and creating a synergy where, if you put in a Ross next to a Walmart, next to a Lowe's, next to McDonald's and a Chipotle, people are going to flock there versus going to just a neighborhood retail strip center because they can get more of their shopping done in one place. It's convenient, it's fast, it's easy, and it can be done. Whenever I first invested in shopping centers, you had a lot more businesses that were brick and mortar. After Amazon, after GoPuff, after all these online businesses came in, they started wiping out the mom and pops. But what happened with that? There's not enough tenants to go around to feed all these shopping centers, the strip centers, multi-tenant centers. So they have to go somewhere, condense somewhere. That's usually the best in class, which is the power centers.
So let me ask you a question. This new acquisition you bought, was it called One Museum? Is that in Berkeley in Miami, right? So you bought, so is this a sort of a brand new building? There was a bottom floor, correct? Which ideal, was it always conceived to be a potential sale for a restaurant? Was that always the intention of?
Yeah. So what's crazy, and I don't know how much you've looked in the past of what I've bought. So this was actually one of the last acquisitions of what I call the ground floor retail/restaurant condominium purchases. I've actually bought about 100 million over 10 different buildings in Miami to date. And I've kind of been creating a monopoly board of sorts, which pretty much controls every single ground floor of a high profile building, whether it's SLS Lux or One Ocean South of 5th or Maria. And pretty much we're bringing the top 1% of 1% of restaurants that can do 15 to 30 million sales per year. And this was the last piece for me that I was missing in downtown because I'd already signed a couple leases in, I don't know if you're familiar, like the Brickell area. I did the deal with David Grumman and Bad Bunny, and we opened up a restaurant there, Delilah, and a couple other brands. But yes, this was the last piece to the downtown part of the portfolio that, we want to control as many sub areas for hospitality as possible. So if you're going out at night for dinner, you're coming to a Black Lion property, which we put in a top tier restaurant.
So is the model that comes in, so why wouldn't the condo say we are going to put a restaurant ourselves and we are going to they're going to pay us. They're going to pay their own. They're going to do all their own repairs, their own build outs, and things like that, and they're just going to pay us a very high rent. So what these condo associations, they're just selling that space outright. Why aren't they not leasing out to a restaurant themselves?
Yeah, great question. So one, they're not in the restaurant business. They don't know what restaurant's the hottest restaurant. They don't know what restaurant is the right restaurant. They don't know about synergies with their residents. For example, I'm not going to bring in a fast casual concept in a Thousand Museum. It may take somebody that is, operating in Dubai and in London, and they're looking for the Miami flagship, and they're not going to have those contacts. Further, each restaurant's very specific in how they want a space built. So usually these condo associations just leave the spaces in raw shell condition or completely vacant, leave utilities there, and that's it. And they come to me to help find the right restaurant, curate it, build it out, make it the way they want it, or be able to stroke a check for a huge amount of tenant improvement allowance that they may otherwise not have in order to make this space the way it needs to be. So it's like me coming and building something that, I'm building this $300 million building, and why do I care about the $10 million piece at the bottom? It's not their bread and butter. It's not what they care about focusing on. They're looking at the condo sellout of $200-300 million.
So what's your business model? So you'll buy it out. Let's just use round numbers. So you're buying it for $10 million, let's say, right? And are you selling it to the restaurant, or are you partnering with the restaurant? It sounds like, based on pre-conversation, you'll come in and then you'll actually put the money to put it up and running, the tenant improvements.
Yeah, so every deal is different. Usually it depends on the restaurateur, it depends on the property, it depends on, if they have boots on the ground in the States or if they're foreign. It just depends. Every deal is different, but it's usually a lease deal. There is sometimes partnerships or a percentage of gross sales, depending upon how the deal is structured and how much capital is outlaid by myself. And again, each person is different. So I wish there was a secret sauce of this is the formula, this is it, but it's
but you're not selling them the building. You're keeping that. So
basically, I'm still the landlord, the developer.
Right. You're still, so basically, and you're trying to sign them like a 10, 15, 20-year lease. Is that what's
usually 15, 20-year lease with like 10.
So 15-year lease. And obviously you're going to have to do, in most cases, the tenant improvements or give them an allowance of that. And are they going to do the build down, all that, or do you guys take care of that?
So again, it depends on which tenant it is. Some tenants will say, hey, look, we don't have construction expertise here. Can you please build it to a certain degree, and then we'll come put our finishes. Some say, hey, we want to take care of it because we build 10 of these a year. We know our contractor. Just give us the allowance. So it's called like a built to suit or a reverse built to suit. So it depends on each tenant's perspective. But no, we don't sell the unit to them. We own every single unit. And like I said, we're trying to create that monopoly board. When someone says, hey, the Black Lion brand, you have 10 or 20 of the top tier restaurants in the world under the Black Lion umbrella.
So talk to me about this umbrella Black Lion Group, because let's say, I don't know what restaurants you have, but call it ABC restaurant, right? So ABC have their own restaurant. They're going to ABC restaurant. How do you know, how does the Black Lion, you own the space and stuff like that, but how is this your brand of combining everything matter? Because people are going to a restaurant. They're not going to Black Lion. Does it say or it says the name of the restaurant outside?
Yeah, so when I talk about brand, it's more of about a brand within the community of restaurateurs and developers, not much the end user, the customer. That's the restaurateurs. And so a developer calls me and says, Rob, I'm building this new 80-story high-rise. I saw what you did with the 5 other restaurants. It's a blast. Like, one of our restaurants that just opened had 6,000 people at the grand opening. 6,000 people came to a restaurant on one given night. And like, hey, we want that energy. We want that excitement. We want that restaurateur that you did that deal with. We'll give you the space. Just do what you do best. And that's what we bring in. That's the value I bring in. That I'll be spending 2 weeks in Dubai with a restaurateur and in England or whatever it is, curating that relationship and then bringing them overseas so they can plant their flagship here.
So are you running the restaurants, or they're running the restaurants as well? Because when you say I had 6,000 people, like, so you go out there and put the promotion to bring people in, kind of like the promoter, or the restaurant itself is what's bringing the people?
No, the restaurant itself does that. What I mean is we pick the right restaurants, right? Because a lot of these developers will just say, hey, I'm going to put a restaurant, they'll pay me full freight. And not every tenant is equal, right? Like if you put, for example, Raising Cane's or a Chick-fil-A, they'll pay the same restaurant as some of these other restaurants. But if I'm bringing, let's call it a Delilah that just opened up in the Wynn Hotel or just opened up in Los Angeles, and they're bringing all the celebrities of the world, that's more exciting for a building for their clientele for when they want to sell their condos up above than having a Raising Cane's or Chick-fil-A on the ground floor. So it's curating the right operator, curating the right experience, and helping with them and getting them open so that way the building is ultimately successful, and I'm ultimately successful for future ones as well.
So most restaurants fail. Was it 95% of restaurants fail in general? Would you say?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's a very yes, but I would never use that analogy because again, we're talking
Of
about
course,
from
you're talking
one
about
perspective.
the echelon in the best areas. So I'm just saying in general. And there's a restaurant called the Salt Bay, El Nurset, right? With the Salt Bay with the salt thing, right?
Right.
And I went to the London one. I think there's one in Miami. There's one everywhere now as well.
Mhm.
Why do you think that restaurant, like the steaks are 3-4 times more? It's 5-6 times more if you have the gold flakes, which doesn't really taste like anything, but it looks good for the
Mhm.
Instagram picture. Why do you think that guy, his restaurants are crushing? I think he's got $1 billion valuation now. Why do you think that concept is working in your opinion, from a admirer of knowing restaurants?
Yes, so I think well, it goes back to the earlier comment that I made when a lot of things changed during COVID. People no longer wanted to stay cramped up in the house. People no longer wanted to be home. They wanted to go out and they wanted experiences, right? When you go to Nusret, not that I'm a fan of the food, like you mentioned, cool concept. The food's not laterally better than anywhere else at a steakhouse. People want to come get that 1 second photo, that Instagram. I was at that restaurant. I was there. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And people love that. You go, who the heck am I to judge? People love that gold
Hey,
steak,
I
the
got it
steaks
too.
like
I did it with him too. I mean, I did
yeah,
it better than him. I had a little hang time on my salt.
yeah,
But also too, you have to say that, kind of like you in a way, it's very personality driven, right? And even though he's not there, restaurant, and he's done a phenomenal job on social media, celebrities and stuff like that, very similar to what I do and very similar to what you do in that respect, of that as well. But the guy seems to have an insane work ethic, right? It's like every night seems to be like, either working, different location as well.
right.
Which, it's part of what success is. When you're on a wave, you want to keep riding it. It seems that sometimes people, when they're a wave, they just kind of want to sit back and enjoy. And then we all know that sometimes this can happen. So you think that characteristic that you see in him is very similar to some of the stuff that you have and that I have, that others have, or is something completely different there? An
No,
anomaly.
look, I think each person when they're trying to open up a restaurant needs to stand out from the next. And like I mentioned, he is in that top 1% of 1%, where your average customer is spending $300-400 a person versus if you go to a Morton steakhouse, you may be spending 60-70 bucks. And I think in these high profile markets that he's in, that I'm in with Miami, that people will overpay for those things because they want to experience, they want to go out with their friends, they want to have fun. So if he created a new niche and sell a product better and more expensive, God bless his soul. I don't see anything wrong with it. Ultimately, if the customer's paying for it, he's doing something right versus going to where you're seeing all these, these steakhouses, these corporate steakhouses that have been failing left and right, that people want something different. And this corporate way of going about things necessarily may not be the way in these more metropolitan type cities where experiences are valued more than just a great food at a cost effective price.
As a deal maker, because I think that's the label you would be, what's your greatest strength in business?
The greatest strength, without a doubt, is being extremely proficient and fast in what I do. And what I mean by that, on this SLS deal that I bought from one of the largest developers in the world, the Related Group, we ended up doing a due diligence in 48 hours on a building, went non-refundable, I think $3 million in 3 days, and closed in 14 days. So the speed and the efficiency of what I know I want to buy, what I can do with it, and getting it across the finish line versus everyone's like, well, I need 30 days due diligence. I need a financing contingency. I need to ask my grandma if I can buy this. I need to talk to my partners, blah, 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 blah. That is what I think differentiates me and my strength versus others is when I know I want something, I get it done. And I don't play games. And that's what my track record has proved to date. That's what I do. And a lot of people lose out on deals because they're penny foolish or try to grind somebody for 25 grand or 50 grand. I pulled the fast one. It's not about that. For me, it's more about volume and getting shit across the finish line and finalizing it than anything else.
What do you think is your biggest weakness? The mistakes that maybe that that's not your strength and probably costing you money at some point, or the ability to be even more successful than you are?
But my biggest weakness is not having balance in the sense of not knowing when to turn off and always thinking work, work, work. And I gotta go out there and try to find every deal and get every deal because I want every single thing. And I think that's the toughest part I deal with is balance.
And now, so that means you have work ethic, which is, I think, there's not one successful person who argue that without work ethic we wouldn't be where we are. but we live in a society where they talk about work-life balance and mental health.
Yeah,
And
look, I think it affects, you know, your health. Like my health got affected for a while, stressed out all the time, working 18-hour days, 15-hour days, all day, every day. It takes away from hanging out with friends or family. And it's a sacrifice, right? I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad sacrifice. It's any person's to choose. But there's just been a lot of times where, you know, it takes a toll on you, emotional swings up and down. Hey, I lost this time, I have to redo this. A 2-year construction process. It takes a mental and an emotional and physical toll on everybody.
Would you do anything differently if you had to do it
No.
all over? Would you?
No, I wouldn't say I would do it
That's what I'm
differently.
saying.
But
So like, it's the same way too, right? People like you know, like,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't do anything. And
Right.
here's the thing too. I don't know, during COVID, the beginning part, it was kind of boring in April when we all thought we'd die and we weren't going anywhere. And that was the definition of retirement. Yeah, you're on the phone making things, but you know, the world is different. So you wouldn't do anything different. But here's the thing too, without sacrifice, there is no success. So now we live in a generation that talks about work-life balance. They talk about mental health, and you know, everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody believes in the freedom of speech until they, yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So, okay, but so what's the solution? Because the world is woke. So what do you think is going to happen? Are we just going to get, you know, woker, and then the people that are tough and resilient and have mental toughness will succeed, and the woke people will always point the finger, right?
Right.
Or do you think there's going to be a shift? Because I don't see a shift anytime soon. I don't.
You want my honest answer?
Yeah.
My honest answer is, if you're not willing to sacrifice your mind, your body, and your soul to get to the next level and be successful, then don't bitch at the person that's willing to do that and is successful and say, why not me? That is what I have to say to those people, because there are some people that are willing to sacrifice it all because they want something that badly. Kobe Bryant's of the world, elite athletes of the world. And for good or for bad, if that's not your life and you're not at where that person's success is, and you're saying, why not me? I wish I could do it. Too fucking bad. You know, that is what it is. Man up, grow up, stop bitching. I think that's the biggest problem we have with the younger generation. They bitch, they complain, they want more and more equality. And it's like, it's not a matter of equality. If someone's willing to take it to the next level and to sacrifice their day-to-day life and their health, they deserve it. They've earned it. But I think the problem with the younger generation is everybody wants handouts, and I'm not about that.
So Rob, do you think that, you know, your brand is the line, my brand of mega success, my biggest is a line as well. In fact, I might change it to Red Lion after. Oh no, that's a cheap hotel brand. I forget.
I'll give you
scratch
white
that.
line.
We got to edit that part out. I don't edit in anything. It takes too much work to go back. But would you agree that in the world, in the business world of success, there's a food chain, right? And I'm sure you deal with some of the biggest players, and sometimes people are more successful than you. Sometimes you have to pander to when they want to meet or what they want to do, or, hey, I very rarely do successful people like, hey, I'll fly to you unless they want something from you. You have to go to them. You have to make the effort as well. And so first of all, do you believe that there is a food chain in the business, or do you think we're all just equal lions roaming around?
No, there's 100% a food chain in the business.
Right. And so, but then there's the lines like, well, every line should be equal. So do you think that when people don't recognize a food chain, that they don't have respect? And I tend to have respect for people that are older than me, people who have accomplished more than me, even though I've accomplished a lot, because I know that, you know, there's always someone doing better, making more money than me, giving more to charity as well. And that food chain makes me fight to want to go up the food chain so I can reach the best top that I know I could reach. And it's always unknown. But there just seems to be people don't understand that there's a food chain. And I think there's just hey, I'm going to start in real estate. Hey, I didn't get a deal the next day. This doesn't work. Or, you know what? I can go talk to billionaires. They're just like you and I. They put on their pants the same way.
Right. No, look, I think you have to earn your badges, right? Like when I bought my first retail shopping center, I'll never forget the real estate director on the other side that's in charge of acquisitions and dispositions. Like, who are you again? Flat out. Like, do I know you? What are your deals? Who are you? What's your website? What's this? Show me proof of funds. And, you know, it really made me change my game and make me step up that, look, you need to earn your badges of honor here. You need to prove, you know, there's a lot of deals where I went non-contingent just so somebody would trust me, just so I can get my foot in the door. There's times where you have to make those sacrifices and those leaps and bounds to get where you want to get. And if you think you're just going to come in this business and say, unless you have a couple $1 billion sitting in the bank and your money talks, you need to earn your way up through the food chain for good or for bad.
I just want to, people, that what he said is actually, and I don't think people, I knew what you said, but I want to make, he said Sometimes I win deals on non-contingent. What he's basically saying, and by the way, I interviewed on a show, the billionaire Rami Albatrari, very similar. Listen, I'm going to do the deal with cash or contingency. I mean, no contingency. It doesn't work out. You keep my money or I'm all in. And what that does is it increases the risk like 100% on you. And then the other people say like, wow, this person's willing to do that. And when you're competing against sometimes people that have, you know, the Blackstones, the Black Rocks, or any other big entity who have tons of money, unlimited amount to do everything, you have to take a risk. And so you said, you know what, I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, right? I'm willing to show you I'm serious. And I think you just did it. You mentioned you did it again on the other deal where you say, hey, 3-day due diligence, 3 million hard, closing 14 days, because you know you're competing against bigger lions, right? That have more money, right? More credibility in the market. So you're trying to find that unique selling proposition and sliding through. And by the way, that's called taking a risk. I'm sure it's calculated never, but that's differentiating yourself, as well as if you go to someone, you say, hey, I have a 30-day contingency period. And the other guy's like, well, 30-day here, and this person's got $1 billion company, you're going to lose out. Right. So that's actually
I mean, look, that was key. And you said it, how do I differentiate myself other than this amazingly beautiful mohawk that you mentioned I had earlier, the nice beard?
I said mohawk. I didn't say beautiful. I have beautiful hair today.
How am I going to set myself apart and differentiate? I'm not going to have more money than the big guys. I'm not going to have more of a team. I'm not going to have a bigger army of lawyers. I'm not going to have all these things. But what can I do? I can be more nimble. I could be faster. I could be more aggressive on terms. And that's what made me win. And then there was a snowball effect. I ended up buying, I think, 12 of these. And that's how I set myself apart. And people are like, holy shit, how is this guy doing it so fast? We don't care if the Blackstone has 10 billion, because what if they back out on the 29th day? We have money in hand in 3 days. If this guy is legit, we'll get his money. If he fails, we get his deposit. It's a win-win. We go back to BlackRock. So that's how I differentiated myself. And that was key. And someone in this industry, if you think you're just going to do what everybody else has done, the billion people before you, you're not going to beat everybody else. You have to figure out what differentiates you in whatever subcategory you are in real estate.
Couple last questions. There's an investor in Miami, allegedly. And I'm going to give you a scenario and tell me if you think this is right. So you have a fund and you raise money from a lot of the people on social media, and you buy a giant asset, let's say for 100 million. You're telling your people I'm buying for 100 million, but you find out that the person was buying the asset for, say, for $90 million before, hypothetically. And you're then selling it to your fund and taking a $10 million spread. You're not disclosing it to your investor, or if it is, it's buried into paperwork without knowing. And then you take your 1% acquisition fee, 1% disposition fee, 1% exit fee, management fee, so forth. And let me ask you a question on a business moral. And, you know, because I've asked a lot of very successful people their thoughts on it. Do you think it's wrong to that, you know, yeah, let's say I take 10 million, and if it's still a good deal at 100 million, or do you think there's a fiduciary obligation that, hey, my investors who believe in me, if I get a deal at 90, they should get at 90, and we all participate? What is your thoughts on the ethics and morality? Forget the legal aspects of it. That's a whole other discussion, but just the ethics and morality of that. What do you think?
I think first, I know exactly what you're talking about. I won't name a name. Second, I would say this. I think no matter what you decide to sell or how you go about selling it, if you try to hide it, that's a problem. If you say, hey, look, I bought it for 90. I took 6 months to source the deal. I put my blood, sweat, and tears to get the deal. I've added value, and I'm deciding it to sell for, like you mentioned, 100 to you, and the deal still makes sense. You're giving people the option to still invest. Now, if you're hiding it and putting it in a one-pager clause in 100 pages, and you're trying to be shady about it, that's a different story. I mean, I don't know the exact details of it, but I feel like if you're giving people the option to decide and they know all the facts, that's up to them to do their own due diligence and get their own attorneys and figure out, you know, the dotted line. Because look,
go ahead.
I was going to say, if someone says to me, Rob, you know, I bought the deal for 90, I'm going to sell it to you for 100, and I look at the pro forma and it's worth 150, I'll give them the money. Hell yeah, why not? You know, but if I see that someone's buying a deal for 90, selling it to me 100, and it's worth 100, probably not. That's a problem.
A 2.5 cap deal. But you know, the interesting thing is you said it this: real estate is not instant, and I've done a lot of deals, right? So I know it's not instant too. I now know how the jets and the homes and all that, because I'm also in the education space. So I actually kind of know what numbers are there and what you have to pay in taxes and not. And to me, I think if, you know, you can get away with it, but if you are, this is just any business, dishonest with your investors, your partners, same thing with you trying to put a restaurant, you're not going to get that repeat business as well. And personally, I'm the type of individual that if I'm doing a deal with somebody and you're still participating into the deal, let's say it's not like you just wholesaled me the deal for 10 million. Yeah, I did the deal wholesale, but you're still in a deal. You're still making 20%. You're still making all these fees. I'm like, come on. Like for me, I'd be like, dude, like that for me. Now I'm a sophisticated individual. I think when you're unsophisticated in investing, you make it seem like it's a great deal. And I think that's why people need to do their due diligence. And I think too many people are trusting when it comes down to investing or putting their money somebody else, that there's not that due diligence. Because
that's the social media effect, right?
I
want, the guy has the cars, the jets, the this. I want that life, and I think if I put my money in it, I'm going to be that. You know, that's
Rob, I tell you this, at 4% a year for 10 years, you're not going to get that back, right? But that's the irony, is that nobody is going to get wealthy with that. And 4% is not that much for what you could have done in a 10-year things, because it's also goes up and down. It's a crazy world that we live in. And even I just saw a deal today advertised on just general deal on Facebook. Someone put out a deal. I'm like, this is like a shitty deal. Like but it has glossy pictures and it has the drone. And I think people are either think everything's a scam or they're too trusting. And you know, there doesn't seem to be a middle, but that's why track record is very, very important. Last
that's
question.
why I said what I said on my Instagram post. And that's what the most important thing I said on my Instagram post when people, because so many people like, Rob, mentor me, Rob, coach me. I'm like, I wish I could. I don't have the time. But the one thing I would say is follow the people that actually have a track record of deals bought and then sold, profit margins, how much they paid to investors, what the ROI was, get facts. And if you don't know enough, either A, don't invest, or B, get a freaking attorney that'll cost you a couple grand if you're going to put $100,000 investment, and educate yourself, not only for this deal, but for future deals. Because at the end of the day, if you're not willing to spend a couple grand or ask for advice from a third party to protect your investment, you shouldn't be an investor in the first place. That's how I feel about it.
Last question. 3 of the most important advice you received in your life that if it was to all end there, that's the 3 that define you up until today. What is the 3 best advice you've ever gotten?
3 best advice. The first one that comes to mind is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And that's the
can you expand that theory maybe towards a specific deal or something like that?
Yeah, so I'll explain it like this, because I think this is a very long one, so I'll skip the last 2. If you don't mind, I'll explain this one the most.
This one will have 3 lessons in it.
Okay, so what I mean by that is we as investors always try to get every penny, right? Every model is different. We try to go for the last dollar, the best cap rate, the highest rent, blah, blah, blah. The problem with that is that we don't typically think of time value of money. And what I mean by that is if it's going to take me an extra year to get that extra 10% in rent or 10% in increased value, does that really make sense? I'm being greedy. Versus if I sold it a year prior and I'm good at making 20-30% a year compounded, if I sell it and make that 20-30%, I would be ahead of that other guy that was trying to get greedy to squeeze out every last piece of juice. Let that guy get his juice. Let that guy buy it from you, so that way you can take that investment, keep flipping your money and going and going. Because as you're leveling up in 1031 exchanges, which I'm sure most of your investors understand what that is, my money is constantly being reused. I'm getting higher debt. I'm getting a higher purchase price. So my 10% is going to be on a much higher dollar amount than on that lower dollar amount that I was trying to squeeze out. So the moral of the story I'm trying to say is that stop thinking about every nickel and penny. Think about the whole kit and caboodle. Sell it, move on. Sell it, move on. Because once a property typically hits that 95% occupancy, that peak or whatever it is, there's only really one way for it to go. It's going to go down. It's not just like we just saw with the interest rates and everything that happened. It's going to go down. It's not going to continue to go up. Whether it's retail, you'll lose tenants after you hit 100% occupancy. You're in multifamily, interest rates will go up. Things will get affected. So don't get greedy. Move on to the next.
You know, it's interesting. I say that too. And you know why I think people hold on to stuff is because they're afraid that if they've got this good asset with profit, they're not going to be able to get something else. right? They think in their mind, like, I'm not going to find another deal like that. Rather than my mentality and your mentality, there's always going to be deals. There's always going to be motivated people. There's always going to be opportunity. I think it has a scarcity mindset too. And that's why people hold on too long. That's a great.
Well, because every guru and what everyone tells you always is buy a property and hold it for 20 years, cash out, refi, cash out, refi, cash out, refi. And what's crazy, and a lot of people always talk to me about this, I think, own one property in the past 3 years that I own now. Just one. I've sold every single deal I've ever owned. And that's the tough part that's changing people's mentalities, because I always fight on every conference I go and speak at, every talking event. Everyone's like, well, Robert, isn't the method that all these gurus talk about?
The bird method.
I'm like, guys, when you actually think about that concept for a second, what are you actually doing? You're just over leveraging yourself to the fucking brink. That's all you're doing. Yeah. You're getting to 75% leverage across your portfolio, one market turn, 20, 30%. Here you go, bank. Here are the keys back. That's a foolish mentality that unfortunately a lot of people got hooked to because of what people are trying to sell and what people are trying to convince these individuals to put their money into.
You realize that we have a very similar philosophy, except I'm trying to grow up my beard. I just finished a Hollywood movie last week. I was like, and everyone seemed to get compliments on my beard, and I had to get a haircut because it was too long. I was in a Hollywood movie last week. What did you think in closing of this interview? Right, I made something before, and I think it was probably the quickest hour I've done in a long time as well. A little hesitant at first. If we actually watch the body language of the first 7 minutes.
No, look, I loved it. I loved it. Look, I love that, you and I necessarily don't agree on everything, but it was actually in a very informative and deep dive into knowledgeable things and things that people should know about versus the stereotypical stuff like you mentioned of tell me about your jet or tell me about your car or your 3 girlfriends or 3 wives. And it's like, these are the things I think people should actually listen to because it adds value that's way beyond what I've seen on 95% of the talking kind of thing. So thank you. It was awesome.
Is there a website? I mean, what your social media so people would check you out? It's very refreshing. He has nothing to sell other than the value of information. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to offer my book. So what is there? You want to send someone?
No,
people should definitely check out your website because I think it's got you definitely have a higher class to it, like a very elegant, which is part of your brand, right? The very high kind of net worth restaurants, a classy high end. So it's a very well done website. And I love the video that you did on the museum. I thought that was that museum, like that bottom floor, it was very well done. It was very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I ask is for people, if they like what I talk about, and like what I hear, please continue to follow me at Robert_Rivani. The only thing I will ever tell you I'll probably sell in the near future is T-shirts and sick ass stuff like that, and to help other people.
We're good. We can afford the T-shirt. We can afford the T-shirt as well.
I'll send you one. I'll send you one with the beard, so you can.
I tell you what. Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know if I'm.
You're almost there.
I'm almost there. Yeah, I'm almost there. Although if you take a look at my last Instagram picture, I was all like all scruffy and I had a bullet in my head. I died, but I died in vain. So, listen, I appreciate it, and I'm gonna be honest with you. After talking to you after an hour, I can tell you're the real deal, my friend. I think you've done it. I think what you said are very in line. I can usually tell within seconds. I usually can tell very, very quickly the fugaziness, but this has been a fantastic interview, and I'm sure we could have done Joe Rogan and done 5 hours and still be talking. And I had 4 other questions. We'll have to leave that for other episodes as well, because the 7-second generation will have to listen to this interview for the next year to get to the end result. That nothing is easy. Nothing is easy. That's the lesson. So if you like it, I'll put his website also in the comment. Like, subscribe, wherever you're listening to this information. We appreciate you. Share this interview. I think this is and also too, it's not that we disagreed, but even if we did disagree, it wouldn't change my opinion of you as an entrepreneur and your success. I wouldn't cancel you. We live now in a world where people want the freedom of speech, but until you disagree with them as well. And I think I did a tweet earlier today, and I said, listen, we live in a world now that if we don't agree with people, it doesn't mean that we hate them or not do business with them or cancel them. We have to say, okay, we have difference of opinions, and you often don't change people's opinions until they experience things, right? So that's one thing I have. So, until that. Also too, Robert's announcing he's sending me his Ferrari. Great guy, fantastic. He's a man of the people as well, with a T-shirt and a Ferrari. I'm looking forward to that as well. I will post and I will be a baller, and I've made it too. So thank you so much for listening. We shall see you next time. And just remember that success is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice, and it's not easy. You have to push through. And as long as you never quit, right, you'll win. Thank you. And we'll see you on the next show.